Welcome back. This is Upfront on ENCA. The Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union, Popcru, remains committed to fighting against women and children abuse. That's what the union tells us. Popcru says it supports the call by President Cyril Ramaphosa for harsher action to be taken against perpetrators of violent crimes against women and children. The president said government should work towards changing the criminal justice system to ensure people convicted of extreme violence against vulnerable groups remain behind bars for life and under the harshest conditions. Richard Mamabulo speaks on behalf of Popcru and joins me in studio. So Richard, what is your understanding of what exactly it is that the president is calling for? Because it has stirred a certain degree of debate as to what he means by harsher sentences and sentences served under harsher conditions in our prisons.
We think it simply reflects on the manner in which past actions that have been taken against perpetrators, what have they resulted to? You know, there has not been much that has changed, most of them. In fact, in reality, the prison population of South Africa has not necessarily felt what it should be like being behind bars, because as we speak currently, we've got 85% reoffending rate, meaning that there is no form of rehabilitation within our correctional centers. Now, how do you expect people to come back to be rehabilitated and come back to be reintegrated into society when the Department of Correctional Services has not been able to implement its core mandate? So in harsher sentences, we think this should obviously reflect on what kind of system do we have currently, and how do we actually make those changes that would ensure that inmates do get certain lessons that they do learn within our correctional.
So in that explanation you just gave now, there's a sentence where you say the prison population in South Africa has not experienced what it's like to be in prison. What do you mean by that?
Look, the purpose of our correctional centers is to rehabilitate, and rehabilitation has not been happening. I think we've been speaking about these matters for quite some time, about overcrowding, understaffing. Those are some of the negative impacts that have obviously ensured that the kind of rehabilitation we would need and the reintegration into society is not done at the phase which we would like to see it be happening. That is why when people are released, we get a lot of them, over 86%, reoffending again, because they have not gained any form of skills, and therefore they will go back to the lives of crime. Yes.
So your emphasis is still on the rehabilitation aspects of our correctional system, which is a big emphasis for us, rather than
our argument is
that whole argument of saying let's make prison less enjoyable.
Definitely, prisons are currently enjoyable. I mean, prisoners are idling within correctional centers. They are not doing anything. A lot of taxpayers' money goes into ensuring that they are being fed, they are being housed, and yet they are not making any contributions to the community that they wronged.
But you see, this is where the debate then comes in, and I don't think anyone is debating that perpetrators of violence against women and children deserve harsh sentences, right? And that's part of the reason why some of these crimes actually go with a minimum sentence. It's that sentence, that line that then says prisoners, prison should be made less enjoyable. How can we even make such an argument where right now we just reported about the increase in number of unnatural deaths? I guess what I'm saying is it's about balancing, right? That you are dealing with this phenomenon where you are sending people to jail for the longest possible time that should go to jail for the longest possible time. But can you really make the argument that prison in South Africa is enjoyable?
Look, I think everything that is done should be done within the prescriptions of the Nelson Mandela rules, which of course promote the rights of prisoners. But at the current moment, if you look at the budget that goes into housing and feeding inmates, what reward does society get from that? A lot of money could. But
what's the alternative of that, though, Richard, in our constitutional system where people go to jail as a form of punishment, it's the system, it's the way it works, but they don't lose their human rights.
Currently, jail is not a punishment. Jail is not a rehabilitatory center. Jail actually promotes, what we have seen over the years is the promotion of gangsterism, and of course prisoners remain idle. That is why we are saying that we need to ensure that we look into ensuring that our correctional services become self-sufficient. You remember that part of the monies that we're supposed to have actually ensured that we grew the space within which inmates are accommodated were used for tenderization processes, and considering the fact that we've got a reoffending rate that is increasing, we could be using some of the services in ensuring that inmates are the ones who do those services and of course improve their skills so that when they are released they can then sustain themselves.
Richard, I'm out of time, but I do need to ask you about this report that's showing an increase in the number of unnatural deaths in our prisons. Your members are at the front line of the correctional services in our country. What's your take there? What's
our
happening?
Members have limited capacity, and by the way, these are part of the remnants of what we would call overcrowding, because I mean our members cannot put their lives at risk at all times in ensuring that inmates do follow instructions, while the ratio is too different. In fact, we've had a number of cases where our members have been killed, female correctional officers have been raped, and there are always altercations within our correctional centers. So this is a well-known factor by the department, and yet there has not been a plan in over 10 years that would ensure that we deal away with that challenge. That is why we're coming up with the suggestions that we are bringing forth now to say to end gangsterism within our correctional centers. You need to obviously make sure that they become self-sufficient and prisoners do the actual work. That will obviously keep them busy and improve their skills for when they are released later in life.
All right, Richard Mamabulo of Popcru, thank you so much for coming through.